On behalf of everyone here at Bandit Publishing, I want to thank you, teachers, administrators, principals, superintendents, for listening to this presentation. The goal of this PowerPoint is to explore and to demonstrate how we can use this version of STEM, eSTEM as it's called, a mixture of entrepreneurship and STEM, to achieve higher passing rates for the New York State Regents exam, and how we can use this and its applications from an interdisciplinary capacity, whether it be in English language arts, algebra, obviously, as it's called, the formula, history, science, chemistry, physics, how we can explore these different education categories, and using entrepreneurship to increase the engagement of your students and their ability to understand these education categories, and obviously to pass the test. The first part of this presentation will go into our methodology, our overall methodology and strategy for engagement. And then the second part of the remainder of the presentation will go into the specific tools and instruments, the engineering STEM instruments that will be used in either individually or collectively to help your students, pass these specific tests, whether they be English, chemistry, science, global history, or obviously algebra. So the first part is methodology, and the first part is strategy, and the second part of the presentation is methodology and mechanics. Enjoy. The formula is, full disclosure, a watered down engineering curriculum. It's entrepreneurship. It's engineering, disguised in an entrepreneurial packaging. And the thought process there is that it's literally impossible to teach anyone anything effectively if they're not completely engaged in what they're learning. I mean, could you imagine going to learn how to become a boxer and not liking it? I mean, once you get hit one time, you'd quit, right? So that is our basic premise, that we have to get all of your kids, and not just some, not just the top 1% or the few kids that are academically inclined. They may have parents at home that are very academic, but all of your kids equally excited about what they're learning, so that they will not only do the minimum while they're in school, but they'll go home and they'll work diligently to work at this, at being successful as it relates to the formula and mastering it. And obviously the goal of being an engineer is to go on to become, to start to create some sort of amazing technology like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. So a lot of the formula, a lot of the presentations are very much about college and career readiness, but like any technology, like an iPhone or an Android or a Samsung Galaxy phone, it has different applications. Meaning you can use it to take pictures, you can use your cell phone to make calls, you can use it to send text messages. There's a whole bunch of apps on your cell phone, and that's really good tech. It's ubiquitous. It can be used in a number of different places, and such is the case with the formula. It is ubiquitous academically, as it has applications in history, in economics, in sociology, in psychology, and the reason that this particular brand of engineering curriculum that we are offering, that we call the formula, the reason why we're able to do that and accomplish that is based on the engineering tools that I'm going to that you're going to see in the next slide, but. What's most important is that we're not here to teach a few students. We're not here to engage, a few of the quote unquote nerdy academic students. This is designed to get everyone excited about academia and get everyone excited about not just passing the Regents, but, blowing the doors off the Regents and going on to be successful in college and career. And how we do that, we're going to look at now. So these are the 4 engineering instruments, or as we call it here, our eSTEM, Entrepreneurial STEM Engineering Toolkit, that allow us to to explore history, to explore economics, to explore reading and writing. The kids can write business plans and ELA, English Language Arts, as well as innovation. We tell the kids we're teaching them to make a money machine. So they get very excited and they're engaged, because if you look at the average Instagram page of any kid in this era, they're going to have themselves, they're going to be calling themselves an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurship is really hot. And with these 4 tools and this brand of engineering, we sometimes tell the kids to engage them. We're turning them into money engineers, and using the model that you see to the upper, I guess, looking at it, your right hand corner, we can model out the behavior of a nation. We can go into mapping out or modeling out, conflicts, whether it be war or history or different historical events. We can storyboard the evolution of a great entrepreneur like Ralph Lauren or Madam C.J. Walker or Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, anybody for that matter, and we can do a whole lot of really cool things. Obviously, obviously the formula itself is a linear mathematical algebraic equation, and there is also a logic statement at the bottom that we can explore innovation through in computer programming. So with these 4 tools, we can achieve the goals, 90% of the goals that are outlined as deliverables for your students to pass the Regents exam. And we're going to go into that now. So quickly, here are some more outcomes that students walk away with after they participate in the formula as a class. And the relevance here is that one evening I was watching a science special, and a doctor was talking about a disease, particularly dementia. And he said that if a person understands their illness, if they just understand the characteristics of their illness and what they're going through, they have their chances of beating it and coming out the other end of it successfully go up exponentially, just because they understand what they're dealing with. And to that end, I say that most kids don't understand why they're in school. They don't understand what it's going to do for them. And more specifically, most kids don't know what science is. They don't know why it's valuable. They don't know what it is. They don't know what engineering is. And the reason why I'm going through this is that great entrepreneurs have the ability to act as a scientist and an engineer. Right, that's one of the philosophies of the program, that scientists discover, essentially, and engineers create. Right, and the great entrepreneurs, regardless of their industry, whether it's Madam C.J. Walker, the first African American woman to become a millionaire in the United States as she invented the hot comb, or Elon Musk with his electric cars, or Robert Schultz, the founder of Starbucks. All of those great entrepreneurs have the ability to act as a scientist to discover and an engineer to create and innovate. So with that said, when the students participate and they're excited about doing that and becoming a scientist, or understand why science is important, they're engaged and they understand what they're studying, and they can interpret it better. And that's one of the value propositions of this program, is that we can quickly explain to students what science is, regardless of the type of science, whether it's earth science or physics or whatever it is, and then how it's going to benefit them in their daily lives. And that's very important. So just want to point that out, that that's one of the ways we're able to get kids that ordinarily could care less about science to be excited about it. So again, this is a mixture of entrepreneurship and STEM. It's a sort of a very rare genre that we at Bandit Publishing have been pioneering for the last 15 years. And the thought process here is that people get a lot more out of using math and science and engineering to create new technology that they're going to own, as opposed to just simply doing all the mathematical computation and not understanding what they're doing and just being lost, right? And this version of STEM has been proven to be very effective with all brands or types of students, regardless of socioeconomic background and race. But it's of particular interest to traditionally underserved populations of black and brown kids. And with the media and rap music and rappers and athletes, really making entrepreneurship a hot topic item, this version of entrepreneurship and STEM really resonates well with the students that you may or may not be dealing with. So, and with them, our motto is that you can't teach somebody something effectively if they're not interested in it. All right, because they're going to need to put some skin in the game. So everything, whether it's history or whether it's science, we put it in terms of how can you take this, discover something of value inside this particular industry, and then innovate to turn yourself into a rock star entrepreneur like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, so on and so forth. And it's called eSTEM. The formula and its application in algebra. So these are the categories for the algebra section of the Regents exam, and how they're weighted as far as the grades and how they'll be graded percentage-wise. We do really well with number and quantity. The algebra component, we practically do everything there. And the statistics and probability, the formula is a linear mathematical equation. And linear mathematical equations are the best predictors for success in more complicated mathematical operations like statistics and calculus. And so just coming out of the gate, using the formula as a way of preparing your students for the Regents, we can earn your kids about a 70%. And then all you've got to do is make sure that your math teachers help them with the other 30% with the functions. But so, and we're going to go into this now, but basically just looking at the test, we're hopeful that we can get your kids at least a 70 on the algebra component. Okay, just to reiterate, this is where we are strong. That last slide the visibility was a little sketchy there, so I wanted to make sure that you ladies and gentlemen could see them clearly. This is, from an algebraic perspective, this is where we excel. So this is the formula in its expanded format or version, and it's obviously designed to engage students. I've never seen a formula where there's actually money in the actual formula. I've never seen that. And I heard a horrible statistic saying that in New York, 1 in every 20 high school students graduate with math proficiency enough to successfully deal with college. I heard that. And I don't think it's because the kids are any less smart in New York. I just think that there's a lot more misunderstanding about what math is and what it can do for the kids. So from an engagement perspective, the formula is, again, this is a linear mathematical equation, and you can see that a big part of it is interpreting categorical, and quantitative data. All right, the categorical components are the I, the C, and the R, and the quantitative are going to be the 3 V's there, and as well as the time. So right off the bat, you can see that this is built into the DNA. This skill set of interpreting categorical and quantitative data is built right into the DNA of this is the formula. And the thesis here, when it's collapsed, when the formula collapses and the students solve it completely, is that money is essentially equal to value over time. So the students are literally, solving for money, which is very exciting to them. I can tell you that they will kill themselves to solve this formula because they want to know how to calculate. I mean, that's what everybody's in school for. The old adage, how is math going to help me in the real world? Well, this sort of answers that. But specifically, as far as the test is concerned, we do this really well. Okay, more good news here. The formula happens to be a polynomial as well as a rational expression. And that is a very big component of the algebra section, and having proficiency solving a polynomial and a rational expression is a very big part of gaining, I think, 60% on just the algebra test alone. And this is something that was drilled with me when I was at Northeastern. It is the basis of engineering, of pre-engineering, solving these linear mathematical equations with these sorts of, with these sorts of mathematical dynamics. So your students would be able to. It's sort of a precursor for becoming an engineer or computer science or someone in the science fields. But this, I can't tell you how much we were drilled on this, and the good news is that it happens to satisfy almost 60% of the mathematical proficiency for the algebra section of the Regents test. Now, this is one of the cooler aspects of the program and the technology, if you will. This is a model to the right-hand corner, and this is modeling out a corporation. This is one of the instruments, the 4 engineering instruments that are designed to do 2 things: teach students to create a new innovation, a disruptive innovation, which is the highest form of success in the entire world of technology, and then a unicorn company, which is basically a company that's creating $1 billion a year in revenue, and that's very exciting for the students. And this wheel that you see here with Shaquille O'Neal and Icy Hot is basically modeling out the behavior of a corporation. In this instance, a marketing advertising campaign for Icy Hot using Shaquille O'Neal as a spokesperson for the company. And the formula to the left is designed to track the rate of speed at which this model is going to produce a certain amount of capital. So the students would, and this is the bread and butter of the program, the students will design a TV commercial and model it out, and then use the formula to and the formula's elements and the setup of the formula to construct their own equation, and then legitimize it by saying how fast their money machine, and that's what we call it, a money machine, how their money machine is designed, how the design of their particular money machine, this marketing and advertising campaign for Icy Hot, how long it's going to take for this thing to produce $1 million or $100 million or whatever the expectation is for the marketing and advertising campaign. So the kids learn to understand the construct of the formula. They understand it visually, conceptually, and then they obviously understand it mathematically. And they are going to run through these drills, so they really get some really good exercise and reps, if you will, as far as designing equations and interpreting the structure of these expressions. All right, so this is one of the ones that I'm really fond of, and really proud of this because I struggled with this in school and in college. So after the students learn to solve the linear mathematical equation for time, they can plot it out on a graph. And graphing is incredibly important. There's so many different disciplines that graphing is used in finance and in all of the sciences. And usually, I didn't understand this when I was studying in engineering. The x-axis is usually time, and the y-axis is usually some sort of value. In this instance, it's going to be money. So understanding this and being able to plot it out helps the students with solving equations, and then the thought process of inequalities. Inequalities usually take place on a timeline on the x-axis and sometimes even the y-axis, but mostly on the x-axis. So in other disciplines like earth science, you'll see charts that have a different sort of a y and x value setup. But the good news here is that when students go through this and are solved, the x-axis is time and the y-axis is money, and we tell them that you can usually 99.9% of the time the x-axis is going to be the time and the y-axis is going to be the value, whatever it is, money, absorption rate of liquid into a solid, whatever we are tracking the rate of speed of with some mathematical formula. Then when they see it in different disciplines, whether it be in science or here in entrepreneurship, they'll recognize it for what it is, and it's just another application that they can see, and it's not foreign to them. But they're not going to sit there and decipher it in earth science if you just give it to them on the surface. They're going to be like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what absorption into a. They're not going to get it. At least I didn't get it. I didn't get it until after I was in college, after I graduated from college. So only God knows. These children with their attention spans that are very low, you're going to have to give it to them first in a way that they can digest. And when they get an understanding that the x-axis is time and the y-axis is money, something that they understand, something that's already inside their mind, then it's just a matter of replicating or applying that understanding in other disciplines. So I'm really excited, and charting is very important. And then the less than an equal then leads them into logic statements. But you don't, and when you're in high school, you don't get that. You just see it. You just see each one as its own individual horror that you have to figure out, and you don't understand. You don't know where it's coming from. You can't relate it to anything. This gives them a reference point, so that they can use this reference point and apply it in other disciplines. So I'm really excited about this method of teaching this and this application, being able to plot this out and the output being money, and then giving the students an understanding of graphing and charting, because charting is a whole language and the students need to understand it. So solving equations and inequalities is something that we really do well. All right, so in conclusion, this is the formula. This is the expanded, long version of the formula. When it's solved, the main thesis statement is that money is equal to value over time. It satisfies, I would say, 75% of the Regents exam in algebra for New York State, and with the added, it's not a function. All right, it's not a function, but you can still plot it out. And the added bonus here is that it's highly, highly engaging. So for all the students that are completely disengaged with math and don't care and you're never going to get them to pay attention to math. Again, there's some statistic that said, I think 1 in 20 students from public school in New York graduate with math proficiency enough to be successful in college. And again, I don't believe that it's an intelligence thing. This is New York. This is the money and fashion capital of the world. All right. I believe it's an engagement thing. So what you're, as a school district, are going to receive is 70% of the algebra that the kids are going to have to be competent in to pass the test is built into this formula, with the added bonus of it being highly, highly engaging for all of your students. And that's our algebraic value proposition. The formula and its applications in the English language arts. Now, this is the actual book. It's obviously called The Formula, Supercharge Your Money Machine. The cover was designed to hopefully get people excited. If you look at the it's a picture of a man on a lawnmower, a very simple financial vehicle flying down Wall Street. The money machine and formula is implied because the engine is made of a formula with three chemicals, three Bunsen burners, and instead of grass coming out of the bottom, there's money coming out of the bottom of the lawnmower. Lawnmowers are very easy vehicles to operate, and we are trying to give off the message that that speed is the name of the game, and so it's engaging to the students. And there's an audio book, there's an ebook that the students would get, as well as the soft copy, so that they can touch it and feel it, and they can listen to the audio book while they literally listen to me reading each chapter to them. And there are pictures of the different machine mechanisms and the instruments in there that that are used to personify the topic or the case study that we may be going into at that particular time in the book. It's written not as a textbook, most importantly, but as an autobiography. So there are literary devices in the book. There's foreshadowing. There's situational irony. All of these things are written into the book. The only time that it gets very technical is in, I think, two sections. One is the Act 3, which is called Assembly Instructions Included, indicative of teaching the kids how to use these tools and assemble their personal money machine. And I think there's another very academic chapter in the back called Kid in the Candy Store, where we go through all of the different types of relationships that they can plug into their machine. So it's a mixture of autobiography, storytelling using various literary devices, and technical writing. And the goal is to really get the kids excited about reading and get them caught up in the story, because it's one thing to teach students how to use this formula. It's another thing for them to listen to my story of how I used it properly or didn't use it properly, so that they can see this formula happening in their own lives. And that's where the transformation and the real learning takes place. And then hopefully the love of reading and understanding of how to actually write, whether it be a business plan, which is the final project of the entire class, or writing a story about their own lives. Because even inside business plans, you're called to write stories about your own life, your own bio. You're selling yourself. So the notion of reading and writing is very important, even in a technical exercise like writing a business plan. So here we just want to illustrate the physics of the actual model, right? And how the model behaves. And liken it to other physics phenomena like a turbine engine. And the reason why this is important is that this model is incidentally the framework of a business plan. So as the students progress throughout the lessons, whether they're designing television commercials or creating their own products using a logic statement, which is really not necessarily part of the Regents exam, but definitely part of the next generation science teaching standards and part of the engagement of the program. We want kids excited about, right? If we want them to read and develop all of these skills, it takes time, it takes commitment. And there's an old adage in sales that says, if you want anyone to do anything for you, you've got to show them that doing what you want them to do is going to get them what they want in life. And they want to be successful entrepreneurs desperately, right? So we want them to study hard, spend extra time, not on Instagram and TikTok, studying and getting ready and passing this Regents exam. So we've got to show them that doing that and doing what we want them to do is more valuable to them than sitting on TikTok and Instagram. And that's what this model, that's why this model is very important, because it shows them the evolution of not only other great entrepreneurs and how they did it so they can imitate that behavior. And this is why model literacy is very important. It's critically important. And model literacy actually translates to other sciences like earth science and physics. I mean, it's all about models and their mathematical interpretation of how the model does some work. All right. And after the kids see this, and excited about learning how this thing works so that they can imitate this behavior in their own life as a successful entrepreneur, when they're in earth science or when they're in any other discipline, they will instantly recognize that that's a model, and that's the mathematical interpretation to track the rate of speed at which the model does its work, whether it's an electrical circuit or whether it's some sort of phenomena with chemistry. They will understand the correlation of models and math pretty quick. All right. So, but from an English language arts and writing perspective, as they start to get into the writing of their own business plans as the final project for the class, and their vocabulary starts to develop. Right. They'll start to see that, this part of the business plan that I'm supposed to write right here is really asking me about information. Right, information to sell, and there's, I don't want to get into the specifics. It's either information to create, to discover, or to sell, right? And it toggles between the scientist, the engineer, and the salesperson. So they'll recognize those three job descriptions inside their business plan, and they'll be able to switch in and out of them mentally and use the vocabulary words that we're going to give them to articulate how exactly they're going to do it, how they're going to discover new products to sell, how they're going to engineer new products to sell, or how they're going to sell the products that they've discovered and sold. All right. So, you can liken it to a turbine engine, and you can also liken it to the famous model of hydrogen and oxygen coming together to make water. All right. Our thesis is that information, commodities, and relationships are the elements of a successful financial transaction or money or a company. Right. So I'm an electrical engineer. This is sort of another theft from all of the circuits design classes that I had to go through studying electrical engineering, whether it be resistors and capacitors and power supplies, and their elements, and then the math to do that, to track how fast that circuit was going to produce some sort of current or some sort of load voltage, right? I'm just using different elements and saying that the output of as is the case where the output of electrical circuit is current, to keep your lights on, or Elon Musk move his electrical cars down the street faster than everybody else. The input of this machine is information, and the output is money. All right. So we look at it as an input and an output, and that thesis and that way of looking at things is consistent through all aspects of science and engineering, and the students will understand that. So this will raise their science and technology literacy, because we're leading them through this with dangling this carrot of making a money machine, which is what they want. They don't care about electrical circuits. They don't care about earth science, but they do care about a money machine. So we're just giving them what they want in a way that they didn't know they wanted it, and then saying, okay, now use this same application in earth science and any place else. But again, I don't want to get too far off track. This also has applications in teaching them how to write a business plan. Now, this is something that we're really proud of, our methodology as to how we build vocabulary. And I admittedly stole this watching my daughter when she was in elementary school, watching the schools that she attended build her vocabulary. They would give her these vocabulary words, and then she would have to write them in a sentence. So this is somewhat a theft from that methodology. So based on the fact that the formula has 4 instruments that we went over before, we're really focusing it now on the model, which allows us to do a lot of really cool things like model the evolution of a brand from an entrepreneurial perspective, which is really exciting to the kids, so they can storyboard the evolution of Oprah Winfrey or Sean Puffy Combs or Ralph Lauren, and they can literally visually see how the company evolved from the first product to the last. We can also use it to write business plans, which we discussed, and I think we're going to discuss in some other slides. We're going to go into detail that. That's the ultimate writing experience, to write a business plan. But we can give at the beginning of the curriculum and the teacher's guide that when we give this to the schools, there are hundreds of vocabulary words that are literally compiled in this teacher's guide. And they're broken into categories. The 3 elements of the formula are information, commodities, and relationships. And the thesis is that when you put those 3 elements together, like hydrogen and oxygen come together to make water, you have a successful financial transaction, whether it be a company, the behavior of a corporation, the behavior of a country, which allows us to get into, U.S. history, and government and civic literacy. Model literacy is really big here, and this is one of the ways we take advantage of it. So each component has its own list of vocabulary words in the curriculum and in the teacher's guide. So the teachers basically throughout the course of the year can build the students' vocabulary by showing them that, see this word over here that you think is called marketing and advertising? It's really another word for information. Or you see this other term here called distribution? That's really another word in the context of a corporation and a money machine. It's really just the relationship. So the students not only can visually see how this company behaves, but when they hear certain terms and they develop their vocabulary, they sort of put it in the context of this visual model that they have as their, almost like when you go to the army and they say, this is my gun, and you can take the gun apart and pull it back together again with your eyes closed. That's what this model is. This model is basically the framework of how to assemble a company like a kid assembles Lego blocks, right? And the vocabulary words fit inside the component, each part of this machine, right? So when everybody else hears the word unicorn, which they don't know what that is, but a unicorn is a company, a startup company making $1 billion, right? They're like, what the heck is that? But our kids know that a unicorn is basically just a company, which is basically just a commodity, right? So they can hear these words and almost like rudimentally they know how to, like, it's almost like putting words in a Chester drawer and saying your room is messy and there's all these words lying all over the place, but put that in the relationship drawer and put those over there, put those in the commodity drawer and over there, put those in the information drawer, and now you can get your mental head around them really quick. So we build vocabulary like that, and I know for myself, when I hear as a kid, I hear the word cat, I search through my array in my memory, and I hear and I see a picture of a cat going meow, and I'm like, oh yeah, cat, I know what it is, right? That's the same thought process here. So we can, over the course of a year, really build all of your students' vocabulary very quickly. It's from a business context. And by the end of the year, mid-year, they should be able to, hear, like, say, the Bloomberg channel or pick up the Wall Street Journal. And now these terms are not foreign to them. Now they know what they mean. And arguably, you can you can have fun with it and say, hey, does this term, can it fit in the relationship and the commodity drawer and the information drawer? And then you can debate. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do with it in the classroom. But this is one of the ways we build vocabulary, and I sort of stole this watching the way they built my daughter's vocabulary at the schools when she was in elementary school, and it works. It works. Another thing to note: if you allow your kids to use this and go through these drills, and if they read the Wall Street Journal cover to cover for 2 years straight, that is the equivalent of getting a master's degree in business administration. Everybody knows that. All right. So if your kids develop their vocabulary, and there are hundreds of words in this curriculum, I just used to hear words and I would just pile them in. Nope, that goes there, and I have it's literally 6 pages at the front of the teacher's guide. If you do this, and your kids come in to, say, high school in 9th grade, and they do this all throughout high school, by the time they graduate and go and are getting ready to go to college or go into the real world, they're going to be a very dangerous group of kids. Students work in teams at the C-suite level, CXO, CIOs, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Risk Officer. And they do corporate presentations to try to sell to investors or try to sell their products to a corporation with the end goal of exercising their speaking skills. These are a whole host of writing exercises that lead students to the ultimate goal of being able to complete and write on their own a fully blown business plan. And although this is an exercise in entrepreneurship where they're going to be creating companies as opposed to looking for jobs, we do practice job interviews where they would sit on both sides of the desk, one as the hiring manager and one as the employee, just so that they can understand how to deliver a value proposition and sell themselves as a product. The end game here is that when CEOs do their product launches, like when Steve Jobs or Bill Gates gets on stage and speaks to the press about their new latest product release, it's very similar to a job interview. The formula and its application in algebra. All right, this is where it gets kind of cool. All entrepreneurs, all of the greatest entrepreneurs are always history buffs. They love history. And the reason for that, and this is in the program, in some of the lesson plans, is that if you can compare the past to the present, you can predict the future. Investors, they always talk about the history of the stock, right? So understanding history is very important for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs really are successful because they can predict the products that are going to be needed from now into the future, and they create what's called next generation technology. So what's cool about this is that we can use this model to model out the behavior of someone, like a person bartering, like the barter system, which was before currency, right? And then we can use it to model out, say, Apple selling iPhones all over the country, right, and all over the world, like a corporation. So an individual sole proprietor, a corporation, and we can also use the model to model out a nation. All right, because all three of these things are corporations, are basically money machines. People are money machines, companies are money machines, and so are nations. And in fact, that is the evolution of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs go from being the sole proprietor working out of their garage to the multinational unicorn billion dollar producing revenue corporation that's selling products on a national scale, to the international conglomerate that is selling products all over the world. And that's the evolution. So it's really cool to be able to model this out. And there's also another sort of a offshoot lesson in the teacher's guide that talks about that, you know, the three elements of the formula are information, commodities, and relationships. A commodity is defined as anything people buy or sell. So one of the philosophies of the program is that anytime there's an act of violence, anywhere, whether it be two people fighting in the hallway, or a domestic dispute, or a war that we're experiencing right now between Russia and Ukraine, it's always over some commodity. In fact, sociologically speaking, the philosophy of the program is that any act of violence is an indication that there's a lack of some commodity somewhere. And the commodity could be defined as oil, right, or which is an energy, and which we'll talk about in a little bit, or respect or affection. All of these things are, we can quantify as a commodity. Anything bought or sold, human beings bought or sold, information is bought or sold, relationship, everything, anything. Plainly in the corporate, if you read the Wall Street Journal, they'll define a commodity as a natural resource like zinc or bauxite or oil in its raw form, right? And they trade commodities on the commodities index. But for the sake of this program, to simplify it, we define anything as a commodity that's bought or sold. And obviously in the program, the more you sell of your commodity, the hotter it gets. So a cute little thing we do. So basically, every historical milestone that's studied in history is usually based on war. Right. Another one of the philosophies of the program is that the best ways to increase money, or to the best ways to manufacture money is to create a disruptive innovation or to start a war. Right. Those two things historically have been proven to create the most revenue. Right. And when you can't create an industry, right, if you don't have engineers in Russia that are creating industries and creating Twitters and Teslas and things like that, then what governments usually do is they start a war, and that's just proven over history. So what the students learn to do is model these historical events out using the model, the formula. And they can actually storyboard it and basically write a story and see how how one situation evolved into another situation. So how the embargo on oil, America and China, led to Japan attacking Pearl Harbor, right? And then how it leads to other nations getting involved through relations. You can literally storyboard it out and explain it. Now, because the kids can see it visually, in this visual format, which I'll show you in another slide, how we storyboard out like the evolution of Ralph Lauren or Sean Puffy Combs. Because the kids are seeing it visually, their level of understanding of it grows exponentially. Because when I was in college, they would say, listen, Bintel, I don't care what you think you've invented or what you've designed. If you don't show me a picture of it, I'm not going to understand it. So, and that was my professor who went to West Point, incidentally. He was the one who said that to me, and that stuck with me. And that's part of why I created this visual model, because of what he said. So this has very strong applications in history. And we can, we can also talk about everything really is affected by monetary policy, and the government is there specifically to make sure that resources and commodities like bread and oil and sugar and natural gas or whatever that people need on a national scale is divided evenly amongst the people fairly, right? That's the government's job, right? So these are all of this that I'm saying to you is in the lesson plans. So once the kids have an understanding of this, an understanding of why countries go to war, and how you can model out a country or a company and storyboard the behavior, their level of understanding of it's going to become very easy for them to explain it, to draw it out, because if you can draw something, basically a picture tells 1,000 words, all right? So as you can see here, this chart, this graphic, traces where the time is the x-axis and the consumer price index is the y-axis, as we discussed before when we were talking about inequalities. And you can see that it's tracing out the effects of these wars and major market moving events over a timeline of, it looks like, 200 years. And you'll hear, when you watch the Bloomberg channel or you watch any CNBC, you'll hear these very successful investors, and they'll very often refer to their research, and they'll say the history of the stock, traditionally the stock, or the history of the stock, which speaks to the fact that history and these charts and modeling it out this way that we suggest is common practice, and is nothing. I mean, it's nothing that we can really take credit for, other than the fact that we at Bandit Publishing have this proprietary visual model to map it out. But this is the way things are done in the real world, and this is why the Common Core is, as you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, speaks to using algebra with reasoning, equations, and inequalities to understand solving. I mean, this is why this is done. So we can map out all of these historical events and sort of what we call storyboard them, which is really going to be cool. The next slide does it for, like, we do it for specific entrepreneurs. And the basically what we're trying to say here is that this way of looking at and examining history makes it more relevant, makes it a lot more understandable to your students, and will get them engaged viscerally in a way that just, giving them the history without the backstory, not relating it to money, will seem boring, and they won't be engaged. Okay, so this is really cool here. What we do using the model, we storyboard the evolution of any entrepreneur, whether in this case, obviously, it's the Grand Wizard herself, Mrs. Oprah Winfrey, and her rise to owning the OWN network. But you can use this to storyboard the evolution of a country, or the progression of hostilities that led to any sort of a conflict. I mean, you can use it to model out anything. And just as a quick note, some executives study just modeling in college. I mean, it's a whole thing where they'll pay someone that understands how to create models, and modeling is a whole genre of education, is what I'm saying. So whenever we teach this in the schools, whenever I've taught it, I can tell you that when you teach it, the kids, you can see them light up. You can see their eyes light up. And some of the classes are on my YouTube channel where they feel like they're getting, the answers. They feel like it's almost like a visual cheat sheet. And it really, gives the students an understanding of exactly how someone goes from, whether it's Martha Stewart, who went from, starting her first product was a cookbook, to becoming the billionaire, Oprah Winfrey, her show on TV, and how she evolved to own her own television network. You can use it to storyboard. I mean, just talking about history, you can use it to storyboard the progression of hostilities and that led to any world war, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I mean, all of these things you can storyboard them out, because you can interpret the different aspects of the evolution of these conflicts by looking at, using the vocabulary exercise that we talked about before, looking at the different aspects of how the conflicts evolved economically, and fitting them into the elements of this model, either information, the commodity, or the relationship. But obviously, you have to understand what the three elements are. And in the book called Kid in the Candy Store, and Act 3, where it's assembly instructions included, those chapters in that act, about 4 chapters in that act, really break it down almost in textbook technical writing format. The rest of the book is very much a story autobiography of myself and working as a sales engineer, and it's, it reads just like any autobiography, as I said before, with literary devices, foreshadowing, and situational irony, and all those things that make writing cool. So this is a really popular lesson plan, and what I'm trying to explain here, trying to express, is its versatility that can toggle between entrepreneurship and history. Now, I've already committed a mortal sin by allowing this presentation to go now almost an hour, running on 52 minutes. And I know people, sometimes have a short attention span and need to go take care of other things. So I want to stop right here, but this slide is just designed to show some additional features and benefits of the program from an engagement perspective, and various literacies, government and civic literacy, leadership and empathy, emotional intelligence. All of these things play into success in academia, global awareness and literacy. I mean, these are all the literacies that you can expect to your students to walk away with, just as a function of entrepreneurship, and critical thinking, information literacy. I mean, being able to go out and find information on the internet. All of these things are critically important. So this is, I'm going to stop it right here. I know we didn't go over all of the different modules of the Regents exam, but in the interest of time and not boring you ladies and gentlemen to death, I want to just stop it right here and say that, my number is 516-902-9837. I am the CEO and founder of Bandit Publishing. I created this formula and all of these instruments. Again, quick recap, I'm an electrical engineer. I worked as a sales engineer in corporate for about 25 years, designing and selling computer systems. And the book is autobiographical. It walks students through my discovery of this formula, and from not just from a sales perspective, but from an engineering. It's a watered down engineering manual wrapped in an entrepreneurial packaging. And if any of you administrators or teachers would like to discuss this, which I'm hoping you will, I'm hoping that this will motivate you to take action and reach out. You can email me at bintelpowell@gmail.com, or send me a message via any of my social media, like my LinkedIn or my Facebook, and I can explain how we can apply this to physics and chemistry and any of the other modules in the Regents exam that are not covered here. But I have a feeling that if you show this to your science or your math teacher and they listen to this presentation in its entirety, they'll be able to get the picture. They'll be able to see that from a physics perspective, it's just the same thing. The model and the mathematical interpretation of models for physics and chemistry are really it. I mean, we're almost stealing from physics and chemistry the way this model is constructed. So I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, sincerely for listening to this presentation. I hope you feel, I think it's sort of I don't mean to talk up my own product, but I think it's academic utopia. It's highly engaging to all students. It's actually designed for adults, but because of the model component and its simplicity, we can use it as an academic tool in the K-12 space. So this is something that whenever we teach this in schools, the kids get incredibly excited. Many times we don't even get a chance to get through the entire curriculum because sometimes the teachers take one little piece of it and the kids love it and they just sort of, I don't want to say milk it, but we've seldom gotten a chance to give the students the entire curriculum to digest in its entirety. Excuse me. And I'm hopeful that in light of the fact that we can apply it from a Regents perspective to get the kids to really be aggressive about starting their own companies and understanding why history and all these other disciplines play into that. I'm hopeful that we can have a real conversation about how we can utilize this tool and really do something special for your students. Again, thank you for your time. My number is 516-902-9837. My name is Bintel Powell. I am the CEO and founder of Bandit Publishing, and it is my sincere hope that you and I talk soon. Take care and be well.